Jared, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
So let me tell you the story of a brighter day if I could.
Yeah.
Put this together. So 7 years ago, Jared, my son Jake, who was a sophomore at the University of Montana, walked up to the highway and jumped in front of an oncoming truck, taking his life. We had been frantically looking for him for a day. Something was wrong. We felt it. We knew it. No drugs, clean talk screen. We just knew something wasn't right with him. And so his phone was turned off. He had all day Friday. We were looking for him. He had already been dead since Thursday night, but he was a John Doe. And so finally, we had a 6:30 at night. Federal Express showed up at our house with a 6-page suicide note. And in that suicide note, Jared, he wrote on the first paragraph was, "Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I never would have told you how I felt. I never would have asked for your help, and I never would have taken your help." And you can imagine this shock. If you're a parent, you were in absolute shock, and grief, but really shock at that moment. It takes a few days to go from shock to grief on this.
Yeah.
And so I talked to his mom on the phone, and we decided that we're going to go up and get his body, that I owed it to the living now to bring his body back to Lafayette, California for burial so people could mourn him. His friends, his family, they had a place to mourn him and so forth. So I must have read that letter on the way up there and then on the way back with his body under the plane from Missoula 100 times. And I said, we have to do something for other families so they don't experience this pain.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't know about it, if we're the parents and we didn't know that this was going on, how many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times a year do parents really not know what's going on with their children who are ticking time bombs? And so we came back and we said, we're going to start a charity. We trademarked the name of Brighter Day, abrighterday.info, because the other org wasn't available at that time. And we just bought it now, but it wasn't available at the time. And we thought, I know what's the best way to reach teens nowadays. And my first thought was, as a mini jock, and my son was definitely a jock who played ice hockey, that we would have a sports charity. But as we did more research, we found out that kids aren't really as into sports like we were into sports.
Right.
That they're much more into music.
Yeah.
So we thought, let's create a charity with resources and reach teens. And we'll reach teens using music. So we took an old concept called Battle of the Bands. You know what that is?
Yeah.
Teen bands playing for teens, some awards. And we started to run Battle of the Bands. We repackaged it called Teen Band Showcases. And lots of towns opened up their community to us to run these bands, 4 or 5 bands, 6 bands, 7 bands competing with each other at community centers. And the winner would get an award and maybe even a college scholarship. And we started to do that. And we had 200 kids at the first one, and then 100, then 400, 300. And suddenly we were talking to 2,000 teens, and we were giving them backpacks. And these string backpacks filled with resources about 1 inch thick. Today they're that thick, but at that time we thought more is better. We've been, we're now the opposite of that. And that was filled with resources. Like, and most of the resources were, what do you do if you're feeling this way? What if you do if your friend is feeling this way? What if you do if your child is feeling this way? And then all the articles that they could read in there. And we started to run these, and we touched a lot of kids. We realized we had to, if we're going to do a charity, you have to do fundraising. We decided the teen events were not going to be fundraising events. They're always going to be free. And we were doing this ongoing. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, you could no longer do live bands. So we started to do teen talent showcases where it could be any talent online. And in our first one, we hit 14,000 people watching it. Which is tremendous. So we began to do these, but we also realized along the way that the best way to reach teens is actually not talking to teens. It does help, but it's going through the parents.
Yeah.
So we refocused our efforts during COVID to be a parent first, teen second showcase program.
Cool.
With original writing, we are prolific writers twice a month. We have original resources come out about different issues of depression, anxiety for teens, what teens experience, what parents experience, and then what parents can do about it, and how to create conversation and ideas for conversation with your teen to help them. And then signs of depression and signs of anxiety over and over. Our Father's Day message coming out on Friday is just all about, it's not always about the father on Father's Day, just like it's not always about the mother on Mother's Day. Take a look at your teen and see how they're feeling, since it's not their day, and are they feeling left out because it's not their day. And if they're struggling with anxiety, that Mother's Day and Father's Day could just make the world a little darker place.
Right.
And that's what we wrote about and write about on a regular basis. So we've been doing that. So now fast forward to today, last year, 2021, Jared, 14,000 people went to the website to look at the resources that we've created. That's a big number, isn't it?
That's awesome. Yeah.
Last month, it was 9,000 alone.
That's awesome.
So
That's
we're
more
growing,
views than I get. No,
yeah. So we are getting exponential growth in people looking at our resources. We're now creating we're going to create, it'll be coming out very shortly. We're modeling ourselves after AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to have Parents Anonymous. That's not what it's going to be called, because we haven't looked into even if that's a trademark name or not.
Hey, Parents Anonymous.
Yeah, Parents Anonymous. And we're going to look at that, and we're going to have parents being able to go into a Zoom program. And we're doing it anonymously because they don't want to show their face. They may not want to put their last name in for fear of, reprisals or school systems or whatever, or bullying that could happen to their teen. But we're going to put that in with counseling session for an hour. It'll eventually be an hour a week, but it's going to be an hour or two a month to start with, where we'll have a counselor and people can ask any question they want about their teen and what to do with it and how to handle it and get answers. And then, of course, we'll drive them to the website to get some written answers as well. And we're going to do that across the country. We're going to roll it out in the Pacific time zone, but we hope within 90 days we're national on that, and parents can come in and get help. And then we'll go back to the teens, to the band showcases, because teens don't want to be anonymous. They're not going to go through that. But we've created on the website 2 downloadable sections of the website. One is called Teen Survival Toolkit. Lots of things that's written in teen language, 8th grade level. It's going to be it's on Instagram. It's going to be on TikTok coming out very shortly. And then for the parents, it's on Facebook and Google, so forth. And it's going to be on the Google ads and Facebook and Instagram, called the Parent Survival Toolkit, with great resources. Then we've got a website, and then we do emailing and original content twice a month, where we'd love to have people sign up on www.abrighterday.info, and they can sign up for a free newsletter. There's no solicitation or no advertising on it at all, but you can get free resources for us. And we're now beginning to talk to some school systems about running these resources through their school systems for parents of teens.
Wow, man. That's a lot. That's
a
awesome.
Mouthful.
I mean,
sorry about that.
No, it's all good. Thank you for sharing. And so you said, so kind of back to your son, right? Like, you said 7 years ago?
7 years ago, yeah.
Okay, and he was 19 when it happened. So yeah, it's a hard age. So do you think, like, was there any kind of like seeing doctors, or did it kind of just really come out of nowhere, kind of his struggle?
Well, I don't want to say there were no signs, because looking back, you can definitely see signs.
Right.
He's coming from a divorce. He came from a divorced family. So let's start with that. Even though I'm in a long-term second marriage, he still comes from a divorced family.
Right.
He got different advice from mom and dad, because we're very different people.
Right.
Different life advice, not parental, but life advice on that. And there was a part of him that just felt very guilty that mom was very unhappy and had her own suicidal issues going on. And he was always sad about that. But the biggest sign that we got a sign when he was in high school. He was a hockey player, and he just didn't seem to be enjoying. He would have a great game. He didn't seem to enjoy it as much as he should. And we were like, why aren't you enjoying this more? We couldn't get to the bottom line there. We did put him into some counseling, thinking maybe something's wrong. he hated that and stopped going after 2 or 3 sessions. He had some eating issues his senior year in high school where he just thought himself as being fat. He's a hockey player. He's about as fat as a pencil, that, but self-esteem is self-esteem, and that was obviously dropping for him. And then when he came home for Christmas break, his sophomore year, just shortly before he took his life, his sleeping pattern was totally disrupted. And he wasn't falling asleep till 3 a.m. And I asked him, what's going on? Are you feeling sad? And he said, no. And he said to me, Dad, I just want you to know, when I was a senior in high school, I did think about suicide. And I stopped what I was doing immediately and said, are you still feeling that way? He goes, no, I haven't felt that way for a long time. Well, that wasn't really a true statement. He was calling out for help, but he couldn't do it. And I lacked the skills as a parent to dig deep enough to see that this was really going on.
Yeah.
Because the difference between, I grew up as a boy, you're a boy. Boys are dumb. No offense to boys, they're dumb. We are. And at 19, you've got an undeveloped brain. 18.
Well, yeah, our brain doesn't fully develop till like 27 or something like that. So,
right. And so the difference between being a teenager who's depressed and a dumb teenager is a shade of gray. So I was a smart kid who was dumb, did some dumb things. Today, some of those dumb things get you in real trouble. But we did it because that's what kids did in those days. You hung around with your friends, and at some point, especially in the summertime, you did some stupid stuff that you wish you never did as an adult, but luckily it doesn't follow you as an adult. Today it would, but in those days it didn't. So I would call myself kind of a dumb teenager, but not a depressed teenager. Right. I looked at him, and so many people looked at him and called him Daddy Junior because he had so many of my mannerisms that I just thought, well, he's just like me.
Yeah. But
he wasn't. He was actually really in a sad place, and his walls were getting dark around him, but we couldn't see it, and we didn't. I wouldn't have even thought of this place where he was.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think the hard part, because I look back at even my own adolescence, I never took medication. I didn't get a diagnosis until a little bit later, but I was such a sensitive to emotions kind of personality. I also played hockey, so we have that in common. I grew up in Colorado playing ice hockey. I just started playing again.
Good.
3-year break, so hockey I love, but so that when you said hockey, I was like, yeah, somebody plays hockey. But yeah, I agree. It's hard. Like, I think men, do kind of act on suicidal thoughts more than women, because I think where, we kind of like do first and then think later, or like we just take action, which is a strength, right? It's a leadership quality of men. Not that women don't take action, but men, we're doers. So even when it's something that's very sad, like suicide, of acting on that, we're more prone to like, acting. But yeah, I was just curious what kind of, so you were saying like you had a hard time as a parent knowing what to do. And then now which I think is amazing, you're doing all of this work now that, like you said, a lot of times parents don't know what to do, and maybe they're like struggling themselves with their own mental health challenges, especially now in the last 2 years with COVID. So what are some of the things that you've learned as talking to parents now, and like, because there's all these factors, right? There's like technology, there's just like people say they're fine but they're not, or we hide with texting and phones. And I can't imagine being the age of, I didn't have a cell phone in high school. I had like a flip phone. So there's all these things that are like cause us to not really know what's going on with people.
So here's the crux of the problem for teens today. And you've experienced your own demons out there, and the difference, if you could explain in layman terms the difference between bipolar depressed, and just depressed, that's pretty good if you can even explain that, because that's really hard. for the
Right.
average person to understand.
Right.
And then somebody just saying, well, I'm not either of those. I'm any of those, excuse me. I'm just me. And that's the fourth option, on that. And that's a very hard thing to recognize. But what we've learned here, Jared, and it's a great question. What have you learned? Well, let's start with the biggest enemy for teens, and that's the cell phone.
Yeah.
So the cell phone creates, and particularly these social media things, whether it's going to be Twitter or Snapchat, they're no longer on Facebook, but they were. It presents the highlight reel of everybody else's life.
Yeah.
So I remember my son, one of my kids asking me, it wasn't necessarily Jake, he said at Christmas time, Dad, are we the only people that don't go to Tahoe or Hawaii for Christmas break? Now that sounds so silly, doesn't it? But that's
I
where
know. Yeah.
It's so the social media was making him feel sadder. And it does for a lot of people. We won't even talk about bullying, cyberbullying, but which has its own problem. But social media is a highlight reel of everybody else's life, and your life is just not as good because your life is normal.
Right.
You have good days, bad days. You have an argument with your parents in the morning, or you just want to be with your friends in the afternoon, or disagreement at school, or you didn't get what you thought you should have gotten on math, and your teacher doesn't like you. And life is life for a lot of ways. So if I carry that cell phone over, because if it was up to me, I wouldn't let teens have cell phones. I just wouldn't do it. But that's not the society we live in, because there are some good things about that, like Google. Google searches, I use it all day long. Well, let me look up what Peter the Great did and what years he was around.
Of course.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Those are the good things. So, but what we've also done as parents, especially with two working parents, is we've gotten busy. It's harder, I'm here in Northern California. It's a 2 working income state to pay mortgages now.
Yeah.
So both parents are working, both parents are tired, both parents are juggling, and you're always out of balance. So I got to be a great business owner. I got to be a great employee. I got to be a great boss. I got to be a great husband. I got to be a great wife. I got to be a great parent. And I got to drive these kids everywhere because we got them more involved now than when I grew up. And I'm sure when you grew up, they're in everything nowadays. And it's going to be even more pressure because without SATs, you better have a 3-page resume if you want to get into the college of your choice.
Right.
And so we're always moving them around, which means we have no time for dinner. We have no time to eat. We go to White Castle. We go to In-N-Out. We go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. We're going faster places. We're eating in the car. Cars sometimes look like fast food restaurants now with kids.
Mine does. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And so what we've done at home is we've taken away the family dinner. And then when we do have a family dinner, and we were required to have family dinners at home because my dad would rush home on certain nights to make sure, and we waited for Dad, very traditional home. We made sure we had that family dinner, that we let the teens now keep the phones at the table, and they're texting their friends, and they're putting it on their lap, and they're looking at social media while they're talking, and so forth and so on. They're doing things that are distracting, and the conversation doesn't exist.
Right.
And so my first piece of advice that I give to parents is to have family dinners that are cell phone free. They can't, no cell phone. They can't have a cell phone here. Why? And I don't mean have it on your lap. I mean, have it in the other room. Put it in a bag. Everybody puts their cell phone in a basket. You don't answer texts. You don't do anything. You got 1 hour of free time, 45 minutes of free time, whatever it might take. And then you as a parent have the opportunity to probe, how was your day? What's your favorite class? Why is that your favorite class? Who's your favorite teacher? Who's your best friend? How's Jimmy doing?
Yeah.
In what class do you have with Jimmy and Bob, or Mary and Bonnie? What do you have going on with them? How are they doing? How are they doing with their parents? How are they doing with their test scores? I saw you got how do you feel getting that on your last test? How does that make you feel? Are you proud? Or do you feel like you could have done better? And because that's judgmental, do you feel like if you put more time in, you would do better? Can I help you in some way? Can we create a plan together to help you in some form? Is it is to work on your grades, to work on your friends, to work on your self-esteem, to work on how about we do this in partnership? I'm your parent, I want to help. I don't want to judge you for being sad. I want to help you not be sad.
Yeah.
I don't want to judge you because you got an 85 or 75 on the test when I thought you should have gotten an A. I want to help you get to some better level for you. What does that take? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, on one hand, it's like easier said than done. I mean, I'm not a parent. I have nephews, but so, but yeah, it's even as adults now, like not teens, we can use social media and scroll Facebook, like you said, the highlight reel, and we can feel bad. And we're like older, like we should have more discipline, kind of naturally as being adults, which that doesn't always play out. But so, yeah, I mean, I think like if you're not, we're made to connect with people.
We are.
And it's not that, if you're really lonely and isolated, you're spending all your time talking to people online. On one hand, you could say like, oh, well, that's better than you just not talking to anyone at all. But it's not the same thing as if you're only doing that. You also don't even know who you're probably really talking to either. That's another problem. But like, we are made for that face to face. Even if it's like a short amount of time. You know what I mean? Like talking to someone for 10 minutes about your life, like you said. So I like that you're saying like, don't use a phone. It's like that would be a good discipline for like all of us, right? Like when
we need that. Get rid of that phone. It's bad for everybody during dinner hours.
Yeah, and I've tried more. Well, I don't know what recently means. Maybe in the last year with like this group I go to on Monday nights with my church, Celebrate Recovery, and like I always meet up with my friends before, and I try to just like, even when we're doing that, like coffee before our meeting, like, hey, this is our hour of talking or whatever. I'm not really going to be on my phone unless it's like an emergency or something, right? Like somebody's calling. Like even doing that discipline makes a huge difference. Like I don't want to sit there and half listen to what people are saying. So yeah, that's really good that you're talking about that. And then like so the articles and the stuff that you're writing, are you doing that? Or are you kind of pulling resources just from like people that you know or experts? So you have like a blog, right, on the website?
We do.
Yeah,
We do. It's on the website at brighterday.info. I am an original writer because I have a financial company besides this. So I write for the financial company.
cool.
And I write for the charity. And then I have a writer on staff who proofs me because I need to be proved.
Yeah, everyone does. Yeah.
And then she also writes an article for both sides as well. So I'm doing one for each a month. She's doing one for each a month. And then sometimes weekly, I'm sending out something that's an original content for me. I'm adding that to it. Or Father's Day, Mother's Day, those are original content articles. And my article coming out for Father's Day this weekend is Happy Father's Day from a survivor.
Yeah.
Because technically they call us survivors.
Okay. Yeah. One thing you said in the that video I watched, I'm sure you've done other guest spots too and stuff, but you were saying that like, so now it's like 7 years later, and I can't imagine that kind of loss. Do you probably an obvious question, like it's still, do you feel like things have changed because of time, or are you able to still feel like no time has passed and it's just there's still grief and sorrow?
That's a very good question about grief.
Yeah.
It's a great question about grief there, Jared. And yes, time has made it easier to deal with the whole situation.
Okay.
So instead of going every week to the cemetery like I once did, I go once a month, once every 6 weeks, because the view doesn't change and the conversation doesn't change. So I don't have to necessarily go to the cemetery. I do it there for some reason. That's my best, because I feel closest to him at the cemetery. And that's okay. But his picture is my screensaver. I've got 4 screens in my office, and all of them have him on it. His 8x10 is next to our family room television. It's easy to be reminded. Movies remind you of him all the time, and you might say, there's some silly movies here. It's just a parent movie, which you would laugh at. Even a comedy will have a moment where it just brings a tear to your eye because it's a child talking to a parent, and you think, I don't have that anymore with him. And he and I had a huge bond on sports, just a monster bond on sports. So we had season tickets to the Sharks. It's very hard for me to go to a hockey game now. As someone who played hockey for 40 years as a goalie and coached at a very high level, it's very hard for me to do that because my wife caught me. This is the first season we didn't have season tickets for the Sharks. We turned them down because I was going to some of the games and I literally would be staring at the rafters. And my wife would say to me, "Are you okay?" And I'd say, "No, let's leave." And because I just couldn't be there because I was in a bad place. Or the Super Bowl or the playoff games, I want to text him and say, "Hey, did you see what happened to Tom Brady? Did you see that play?" Yeah. But I can't do that. So I get stopped from doing that. And so there are moments, even during the best of situations, like a Super Bowl or a playoff game, that it's all positive. None of that affects me directly, but the moment affects me because I can't share it with him. But I could share it with his twin brother and sister are great with that. And they'll text, but they have a life and they shouldn't have to prop up dad or mom because they're having a tough time. They have their own issues.
Right. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, the sports thing makes sense. I think I haven't had the best relationship with my dad, but sports was always the thing that kind of connected us, especially hockey, but yeah, so I thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I feel like a lot of it's like being present in life is where you find a lot of joy and happiness.
Yep.
And then you also feel pain and sorrow because you're like in the moment, right?
Yep.
And a lot of our instincts, whatever it is, loss or mental health challenges, pain or disappointment, our instinct is not to do that, right? Our instinct is to kind of try to numb out the pain or like not face it, kind of like our instinct is to get out of the present moment, and if you do that too long, like months and I don't know, weeks, months, years could pass by and you're like not really present with anything, but it's like I think the healing comes from being in the moment, like allowing yourself, like you said, like to be at the game and just be like, oh, I don't think I can do this right now, because you are being present. That's why you feel that, so what advice would you give to people who are like in a situation like yours where they've lost a son or a daughter or a relative? It doesn't have to be because of suicide, but like maybe that is the story, and like what would you say to that?
So you made a good phrase and that earlier just a moment ago, and that was be in the moment.
Right.
I have a grandson who's 9, and he's been living with us since he's 2, and he doesn't know. He just finally learned what happened. He knew his uncle died, but he didn't know that how. And now he watched one of my videos, so he now knows, and he's really confused. Why would anybody do that and so forth? He's questioning it. But when I remember, no matter how sad I felt, if he was next to me, and we've got a special bond, that I always felt like I needed to be present for him, no matter how I was feeling. I owed that to him. And I have 2 other children. I owe it to them to be present in their lives. They're adults now, but I still owe it to them. I owe it to my employees, because I own a company, to be present in their lives and be present at the company. I owe that to them. And so that word "be present" is a really great phrase. And you need to be in this moment, because that hole in your heart's going to be there no matter what. but you can't let that whole dictate your life, because you become a victim of the whole of the suicide. And you're always going to be a victim of it, but you don't have to treat your life like you're a victim of it. And I think that's where you have to, that's the conscious side of you doing it. The unconscious side is just sad. But the conscious side says, I'm going to get myself in this moment. And there's nothing wrong with counseling. There's nothing wrong with whatever you need, meditation. There's nothing wrong with learning how to get in the moment, whatever that is, to get in the moment. I actually starting to write a book about that, how to get in the moment. And it's all about, what do you need to do? You know, whether you're a hockey player like you are, or I was, or you're in school and you got a big test coming up, or you got a podcast, or you got business, you need to be present for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to keep your job very long. You're not going to keep employees very long if you're not here now.
Yeah.
And that's the conscious decision. I want to tell you a great story if you got a moment here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to tell you a hockey story, because I played forever. And
goalie, huh?
goalie.
Man, you like getting hit with that. I'm too afraid. I played goalie in lacrosse for like 2 days. And I was like, nah, man, no, I'm not getting stuff thrown at me. So
I loved it. I had too many concussions and I had to call it a day, but no, I loved it. And I played with some people in the NHL. So
really,
that's really cool.
Nice.
So, but one thing that was really good, his jersey's hanging in the Oakland, California ice rink, and they retired his jersey in the Missoula, Montana ice rink. He had just had a 7-goal scoring game. And it wasn't enough to stop him from taking his life. It wasn't that high, that adrenaline, excuse me, pumping through his body to do that, still didn't stop him from taking his life. That shows you how powerful depression is. But the coach had a ceremony, and his mom and I were there. And we went up to the Missoula Arena, and we were in there, and there were about 300 people there watching the game, for the 300 people there for the ceremony and the games that were going on. And which is amazing, because when you go to the Oakland rink that kids grew up in, all that were there were parents. Those are the only people that showed up. But Montana is like Colorado. People actually like the sport. So they show up to watch good hockey.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the TV interviewed me. I had a hard time just keeping it together. They had 2 TV stations and 2 newspapers there. Very hard time keeping it together, because everybody wanted to know what happened. And it was still very raw, exceptionally raw when they did this. And the coach had everybody, there were 4 teams, 2 on that sheet of ice and 2 on the other sheet of ice. They all came on that one sheet of ice. And he said to them, I'm going to try to keep myself together on this. And he said, I want everybody in the stands to take off their hats and stand up. And I want all the players here, and there were about 40 or 50 players at that moment, on the ice, drop your sticks, drop your gloves, and take off your helmets, just put them down. And everybody did that. And he said, we're going to retire a jersey in a moment, but I want to teach a little life lesson here. And he said, I want all of you in the stands and on the ice to put your fingers on your pulse, on your wrist, and feel your pulse. Feel that blood going through your veins. And then he paused and he let everybody do that. And then he said, now I want you to put your hand over your mouth and feel the temperature of your breath, the warmth of your breath. And he said, these are 2 major signs that you are alive. And never forget to be alive, and never forget to stay alive, because there are 2 parents mourning the loss of their son because he forgot to stay alive.
Wow.
And there was not, I got through it with you. I'm thankful I don't usually get through that. But there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including my own. We were just, oh my goodness. We were just crying up the storm, that because it was so well done. He and I have become friends since then. And he actually put a beautiful memorial up on the highway at the exit ramp where he jumped onto the highway. There's a beautiful memorial that he made and had to put there.
Wow, what a story, man. Thank you for sharing. I mean, it's something I've said a lot on the podcast, and lots I feel like it's repeated. It's like, living is a choice, right? I mean, it's like there's certain things we can't control. I mean, we don't really know how long we're gonna live, right? I mean, no one really knows. But it's like, man, part of the struggle can be just waking up every day and choosing to live. And I think part of that is asking for help, right? Like asking for help is a way that you choose life, like, and it's a hard thing to do sometimes. It's a big conversation. Like in hindsight, you go, oh, I wish that, I would have asked for help sooner, is what a lot of people say. Like, then I would have, whether it's addiction or mental health challenges. How do you think, like, maybe it's a good place to kind of end, but like, how do you think people can, if they are feeling suicidal or close to that or hopeless, just things are hard, maybe it's been going on for a long time, like, what do you think that they should do? Or like, what would your wisdom say, besides obviously asking for help is a good place to kind of start,
Well, asking for help is the best thing you can do. How to do it is a question, because
Right,
if you're a teen, you may not want to share with anybody, including your closest friends, which Jake didn't share with his friends, how you're really feeling.
right,
He didn't
right.
do that. But asking for help is the best thing to do. Having an honest conversation with your parents, having that honest, non-judgmental conversation with their teen is a great way to do it. We're adding to our website, Jared, and we'll have it up Friday or early part of next week.
Okay.
We've struck a deal with an online counseling service. That means that you can Zoom right from your phone to get help. That means a teenager can get help.
That's
Now,
awesome.
teen, you
Okay.
still need parental help, parental signature, but they can now get help right there without having to go and sit down on a couch and, bare their soul. They can do it via Zoom on their phone. That's the first thing we added. And then the second thing we've just added, or adding in the next few days, is a chat service with a counselor where you'll get up to 45 minutes, unlimited times to chat with a counselor. So it's anonymous. And they could say, I'm feeling this way, and they don't have to look at them, and nobody has to look at, they don't have to look at each other, but they can get some help that way. And you could do that as a teen without parental help from that.
Okay.
As long as you're 13, you don't need a parent to approve that, because it's the chatting circumvents state law of counseling laws and
Okay.
parental advice. So those are things. So we're hoping that people will go to our website by next week and this will be up and running.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but I like the idea of getting help. I wish he got a lot more help. I wish I was stronger about that. His sister did get some help because she was feeling really sad, which is great. His mom got some help afterwards, because after his suicide, she began to get suicidal, thinking, why should I even live? I'm a horrible mother.
Hmm.
I'm terrible. I'm a bad mother. I'm just going to kill myself.
Yeah.
But she lost track of the fact that she had 2 other children that are alive, and just thought, why living?
Yeah.
Why go on living? So people have their demons, and everybody is human. We forget that every single person out there is frail and lacks perfection. But we can be incredibly demanding on ourselves for perfection.
Right.
Especially if you've got a parent like I had, had her own difficulties in life and came up through the Holocaust. And, if I got a 90 on a test, she'd ask me, did anybody get a 95? If I got a 95, she'd say, did anybody get 100? And so it was never good enough. I was just talking to my brother about this. And I said, I still hear mom's voice in my ear, who's dead 24 years. I can still hear her saying, is that really good enough? Are you at your best right now?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a terrible thing to give to your children. But we all do things like this. We all give our industry, our world says shtick. You're giving shtick and stuff to your kids that you wish you didn't, but you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a challenge because, if you don't deal with it yourself, it gets passed down, the kind of the generational patterns. And even if mental illness is partly genetic, if that's not an expert, but like that's a theory. There's still a lot of things that can get shifted and move around in someone's life based on the environment, right? Which is something you can choose to change. As a parent, which is what we've been talking about, which is also hard to do if I'm in California too, right? Like working hard and sitting in traffic and just like the responsibilities and the demands have gone up, so it can be hard to like connect, you know. But I thank you for what you're doing. You're not wasting your pain, you know. You're not wasting the sorrow that you experienced and still are experiencing. So I honor you for that, and thanks for taking time out of your day to come on this podcast and like tell people your story. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you? I mean, I'll put all of your information in the show notes. I know you have a website, you're on Facebook and Instagram, and I think.
Yeah, we're everywhere. It's Elliot, ELLIOT,
Okay.
at abrighterday.info.
Okay.
And the Brighter Day is the website, .info. Those are great ways to get hold of me. And I have parents who call me. My cell number is 510-206-1103.
Okay.
I take calls all the time from parents. Some people say, I live in Oregon, I live here, I need some help. And we'll go and we'll find them three people that they can meet with in the next 24 hours.
Awesome.
It's getting harder to do that because we live in a real weird world that more and more counselors don't want to deal with teens because they just can't make enough money with teens. They make much more money from divorced couples. And that's family practice stuff. But we're going to try to help parents and families any way we can.
Okay. Yeah, it's amazing, man. I will stay in touch with you because Father's Day is coming up, and then you said by next week you'll have the changes to your site. So hopefully by the time I publish this next week, or I'll connect with you, and then we can put this out when the changes are there. So
Thanks, Jared. Really appreciate your time. And
all right. Thank you. You're in San Jose?
San Ramon.
Okay, yeah, I've been up there before. My old job, I used to travel doing virtual tours and stuff. So I did a trip in August where I went. I have friends in Danville. Is that close to you?
Danville's one town north of us.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
It's a cute little town. I love it.
Yeah.
It's got some great food there.
I have some friends through that do the Rock Church, and they do ministry there. And then I went to Redding. One of my friends just moved to Redding from Oregon, but he used to be down here, and then he was in Missouri. So now my next trip is I want to go up and see him. Gas is a little high, so I'm like, shoot, man, I don't mind doing 10-hour drive because it's fun. It's a fun drive. But
when you're on your way traveling north, I'd love to get together with you.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. Yeah. Well, it's on the list, or I'm just like, I don't know. The gas thing's not really getting any better. So
don't expect that for a while.
I know. It's like it's like $6.60 here.
Yeah.
Cheap gas anyway. I don't know if is it the same up there?
It's just below $7.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay. Well, Elliot, I'll let you go, and I'll be in touch with you via email. And like I said, we'll try to connect like next week, and I'll see where you're at with the website and all that. So,
thank you so much.
Cool. All right. Have a good day. And again, thanks for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, buddy. Take
Okay.
care.